Hello, this is Mike, and today I'm going to do a tutorial on how to get root bone motion working between Blender and Unity 5. I'll be using Blender 2.7 and Unity 5. The reason for this tutorial is I had some trouble getting motions based on the character moving forward without sliding in place and applying that root bone motion in Unity, and it took me a while to figure out, so I'm trying to save you guys some time. We're going to start with a blank Blender project. I'm going to go ahead and go through modeling a simple chess piece. Given the use case scenario that on a chessboard, you might want to animate a king walking forward or hopping forward and not have to worry about coding that to keep feet from sliding and modeling it in Blender. Um, I am going to go through the modeling here because I'm going to assume that maybe a novice might come across this and want a start to finish thing. I'll go ahead and put annotations in the video so you can jump forward to the good parts if you already know modeling and rigging in Blender. So let's just start with a brand new Blender project with our default square, and we'll go into edit mode and tap Z to go turn off our textured view, and we will hit A to deselect all. Actually, first let's go ahead and move everything up. G to move, Z for the Z axis, Control to snap to grid, and we'll move everything up so our origin point is at the bottom of our model. A to deselect all, B for box, and let's go ahead and move that down and extrude up, scale, E for extrude, S for scale, extrude again. We'll make this pretty simple so that I don't waste a whole lot of time. G to move, Y for locking on the Y-axis. We'll lean him forward a little bit so that we know which way he's facing in Unity. Extrude again, scale again, and move again. And at this point we've got this weird looking leaning forward king. Hit number 1 to go into our front view. Let's extrude him up a couple more times. Leave a little block there since kings have the crosses on them. Hit Z to go back into shaded mode, and then we'll do Control T to do face select mode. We'll select our two faces there with Shift, and then we'll extrude them, right click to cancel the movement, and then scale them along the x-axis about like that. And tab to exit edit mode. There's our king. In Blender, I have my unit set up so that one of these squares here is about the size of a meter. So just to be predictable in Unity, I'm going to scale this guy down so he fits neatly inside this box. So we will tab to edit again, all to select everything. Go down here and make sure that we are scaling around our 3D cursor, S to scale, and we'll bring him down like that. And his base is a bit big, so Z to get out of shaded mode, Control T to select vertex, all to disable, B for box, and we will just scale this down around that same cursor. A, B for box, G, Y, move him back. Alright, get out of tab mode, go back into there. Okay, we'll go with that. Okay, so there's our king, our awesome king model. If you are going to be texturing him, let's go ahead and unwrap him. Actually, let's do this right since we may have the beginners. So what I want to do is I want to select this Control R. Let's go ahead and give him a cut right down the side like that. And we will use this Control E to mark our seam, and then we will do select all our vertices, and U for UV unwrap, and we'll just unwrap them. And if you want to see what that looks like, we can just drag our split window out, go to UV image editor, and there, that should work. If we were doing this for real, it'd take a little bit of time to clean up our UV maps, but we can go ahead and do image, new image. We'll make a UV grid. 1024 is fine for our purposes, and there we go. So if we go back into this window and click on textured mode, that is horrible. So if we were doing this for real, we would actually take the time to go and adjust our UVs. That bothers me. Let's see if Smart UV Project is going to do any better. That does a little better. Okay. So when you're doing this, if you're new to Blender or new to UV unwrapping, you basically want all these squares to be about the same size to avoid stretching when you do go to texture something. Anyway, enough with that. Get out of edit mode, and there's our beautiful king. This texture, this UV texture, will not move into Unity with the thing unless you apply it over here in your textures area. This is just for our reference. So, enough of that. We already took the time to make sure that our origin here is on the king where we want the center of the model to be, so we can just do Shift A to add an armature, and we'll do a single bone. Over here we will get to our armature section and do X-ray so that we can see it no matter where it is, and tab to enter edit mode, and we'll just move this thing down to about there, and we will extrude it with E to bring up to there, and there is our bone. Alright, tab to get out of edit, and then in order to get this to export properly, we're not going to use a modifier to apply our armature. We're just going to right click on our object, shift right click on the armature, control P to parent, and we will parent with automatic weights. And if you go over here and go into pose mode, that means if we grab our root bone and move it around with G, everything moves. If we grab our little other bone there and double tap R to free rotate, we can kind of lean the king around. Beautiful, right? Alright, so tab to go back into edit mode, and we'll make sure to name this bone root for easy reference, and we will name this bone cross part thing. Alright, going back into object mode, that's really it for making our object. Now let's get into a couple of simple animations. Let's see, I don't want to spend a whole lot of time, so let's go in. In order to do animations for video games, what we want to do is we want to get to our dope sheet editor. But instead of a dope sheet, we're going to go over here to our action editor. And so basically, we're going to create individual actions for everything we would want our character to do. So let's get into back into pose mode. Okay, so the first action I like to do, I just like to call T pose. And what that allows, it's never going to be used in the game, but what it allows me to do is to have the way I modeled my action and my model and set up my armature. I like to get back to that at the start of any new action that starts like this. So that's it. We're just going to select both of our bones, shift and right click, and go up here and I to insert a location and rotation keyframe. And that's it. That's our one frame T-pose. Now if we go and make another action and don't have this one associated to anything, when we restart Blender, it's going to go away. So what we want to do is click on this F here, and now you'll see that this action is assigned to two different objects, entities. One is the object that we're working with, and the other one is a fake object that Blender keeps to where it doesn't clean this action up when it restarts. And that's it. So now let's go ahead and make our idle action. So we will simply do plus to add an action. We will rename it to idle. Now, one thing I've gotten in a bad habit of and something I want you to be watching out for, is a lot of times when I go to make a new action, I'll go down here by habit and just click and start renaming it. That'll, of course, overwrite your other action, so don't do that. Get in the habit of just clicking that F by default, and then you won't experience the horror of saving and reloading your project and realizing that a complex action you made has been overwritten. So now we've got our idle action. Let's just, we've already got our T-pose there, so let's say our idle action is going to be 40 frames long. So we'll go to frame 40. We'll go up here. We have both of our bones selected already. So in this window, in the window where we're doing our action, we'll do Control-C to copy pose. You could also do pose, copy pose. And then since we're already on frame 40, we will do Control-V to paste our pose. And do Insert, Location, Rotation. The reason I did Control-C and Control-V, it's just a habit I like to get into. I realized I could have just left them in place and done another keyframe, but if we had already done a movement here in between, I just like to get into the habit of copying and pasting poses. Okay, so actually, I don't want him to wind up in the same place because I'm showing you guys root bone movement. So let's grab him and drag him forward using the Control key exactly 1 square. And then we will I to insert location rotation again, and then we've got a nice movement back there. Let's go to the middle, G and Z to move him up, insert location rotation, and if we limited that to our 40 frames and Alt A to play. Okay, ugly, but whatever. So let's go a little bit forward from the jump, and actually let's go to home, Control-C to copy our pose. We'll go a little bit forward, and then Control-V to copy our pose. And I'm going to rotate his head forward a little bit, like he's getting ready for the jump. And then reselect all of our bones and insert location rotation. Now, the reason I left him in place before he started jumping is that when we go to Unity, and I'll explain this again when we get there, there's a little bit of a transition where you switch from one action to the next. And if we're applying our root bone movement, then it's possible if you have the overlap start here, then he won't be quite on the ground when the next action starts to take place, and he'll start floating around. Just something to be aware of if your root bone is going to be moving off of the plane of movement. So do the same thing here. At the end, we'll copy that pose, Control-C, move back just a hair, Control-V to paste that pose, and we'll move him back like he's landing a little bit. Reselect that bone, insert location rotation. Alright, so now we've got this neat little jump forward movement. Alright, so shift left to get back to home, and I was doing a jump instead of an idle. So we'll just rename this to jump forward. Make sure it's saved, and then we will add our real idle movement. First, I'm going to go jump back to T-pose because those are the keyframes I wanted to start with. We will add, we'll call this one idle. Make sure we force it to fake. All right. This one will also do 40 frames just for giggles. So Control-C, Control-V, insert, location rotation, go into the middle, and double tap R to rotate just the top one. Insert, location rotation, go over here, double tap R, insert, location rotation, just moving him a little bit. Basically what that'll do is when he's standing idle in the game, it'll all data play. It'll just kind of sit there and look around. Again, we're not going to get too detailed in the keyframes. Okay, Alt A, Shift Left. There's our idle, and he is forced to fake. All right, so now let's go back to the jump forward pose that we just made. That's working. So let's make a jump backwards pose. Just to make this easy, I'm going to basically go here to our 40th frame, grab both these bones. That's kind of bugging me there. Let's switch this back to median point. Okay, so just grab him and control move him back there. Insert location rotation. And that's going to look all weird, but basically we can go back to here and copy this pose. Go back to here, paste it, move his head forward a little bit, kind of twist it to the side like he was looking back. Select those, insert location rotation, and then we go to the first frame, copy our pose, paste our pose, kind of like he's starting to head back, double tap R, give him a little wind up there, and insert location rotation, and then in the middle, we just basically need to move this back about halfway there. Insert location rotation. And now we've got a nice little jump back pose with a little head twist so that we know that we're looking back. All right, Shift Left. That is forced, so we're good. Ah, I almost did it again. I almost just started renaming here. Darn that habit. All right, so we'll add another pose. We'll call this jump right. And we will force it. And this time we will hit 1. And notice that when we hit 1, we're looking from behind him because I'm modeling on a Z forward axis here. So we will be jumping to the right. So there's that pose. Let's go ahead and copy it to here. And then on this pose, we know everything is straight. It just needs to move to the right. So notice we're back though. So let's go ahead and copy or paste the pose we already have copied. And then we will move this right 1 square. Insert location rotation. Copy that pose. Go back to here. Paste, insert, location rotation. And then for this one, I'm actually just going to delete it. X to delete. That'll get rid of our forward back motion and we'll just kind of be in the middle, but we'll get into the air. Insert, location rotation. All right. So just because I'm like that, I'm going to have to go here and rotate that in just a little bit. Insert location rotation, go here, rotate that in just a little bit, insert location rotation, and then we've got a nice little jump right. That is saved. We will add a new jump left. It's going to be the same thing. Except obviously we want to move him left instead of right. Insert location rotation, copy, paste. And let's lean that right a little bit. Insert location rotation. Copy. Paste. Lean that left a little bit. insert location rotation, and get to the middle, and just slide them to the left, insert location rotation, and there is our left jump. Alright, enough with the animating. Make sure we save that. So now we've got 5 different poses here. We should have 6. What did we miss? Because we're on jump left, it's not going to show us it as an option to switch to. Okay, so anyway, there is our king, and he does all 5 actions. So now we're ready to export him. Let's get back into object mode, deselect everything, make sure that our lights and cameras are gone. We won't need them. Shift C to center. Beautiful king. Okay, so over in Unity, I've already started a blank project called King Test. So in Blender, we're just going to leave everything deselected. We're going to File, Export, FBX. And the main settings that we want to worry about here are, we'll do Z forward and Y up. We want to make sure that baked animation is on and NLA strips, or at least all actions is on. We don't have any NLA strips, but those are the main things you want: Z forward and all actions in baked animation. Then we'll navigate to our Unity folder, and we will go into our King Test folder and our assets. We will create a new directory called Blender. You could technically save the blend file in the Unity directory, and Unity does recognize those. I've had trouble with that in the past, so I like to, it makes more sense to me organizationally just to export FBXs. So I keep a folder called Blender in there, and we will call this guy our king and export him. And we will go back to Unity, and our Blender folder shows up, which is nice. Okay, so let's go ahead and do our little startup cleanup in Unity. Make our scenes folder, file. Let's save our current scene as kingdemo.unity. And so let's start out with a plane. Right click, 3D object, plane. This will be our chessboard. 1, 2, 3, 4, a 10 by 10 chessboard. Wonderful. Alright, I'm not going to bother fixing that right now. So go ahead and drag our king onto the chessboard. Let's get overhead and kind of make sure that he's centered on one of these squares. These squares in Unity are also roughly a meter, or a meter, yeah. So these will match up with the larger squares in Blender nicely. Our camera's a bit far off, so let's find him. There you are. Let's get a little bit closer to our king so we can kind of see what's going on. E to rotate, and oh, that was ugly. Let's rotate him down and a little left, and now he can kind of see what our king is doing. Alright. Spending a bit too much time on this, but whatever. Okay, so now if we play our game down here, nothing happens because we haven't assigned any animations yet. So here's where it gets kind of fun. So what we'll do is we've got our nice little animations built into the FBX here, our idle, jumps, and T-pose. We're still missing our jump back. Let's go fix that real quick. That's bugging me. I must have done what I told you guys I was going to try to avoid doing. Pose mode. Jump left, jump right. Yeah, we're missing our jump back. I must have just renamed it. Okay, so add another one. Call it jump back. And I'm just going to pause the video while I create this. Okay, I'm not sure what happened. As soon as I renamed this pose to jump back, and it just appeared. So who knows? All right, but now we do have our jump forward, jump back, jump left, and jump right, and our idle. So now we can go to File, Export, FBX, same file, and when we go back to Unity, it automatically re-imports the file, and there are various animations. Jump back. Okay. So, working with our king model, we now need an animation controller. So we've got this animator here, but in order to interact with it with our scripts and stuff, let's go ahead and add an animation controller. Create folder, animators, and in that folder we want to create an animation controller, and we'll call it King Anim Controller. And we will select our king object and drag that over to our controller, and there we go. So when we have this animation controller set up over here on our animator layer, if you don't have this animator window open, you can just go to Window and open up the animator window. And I like to drag it down to my console because I hardly ever use my console. And that has basically starts with an any state and an entry state. And I wish you could zoom these things. Can you zoom them? No? Okay. Alright, so let's go ahead and get back to our king object, and rather than controlling everything with scripts, I like to use this animator here because I don't know, I like visual stuff. So our default is the first action that we drag in, so let's drag in idle. Alright, there is our idle. Let's go ahead and drag some stuff around since I'm dealing with a small window. That'll have to do. So we've got our idle in here, so let's go ahead and grab our jump forward, our jump backwards, our jump left, and our jump right. Okay, now we're going to want to transition between these two based on input from our script, so let's just make some booleans over here. So let's make idle, whoops, delete. Let's make our forward, let's make our backwards, and a left, and a right. And we'll basically set these states with our script, and I'll show you how to do that in a minute. For these actions here, I'm going to want to refer to them by name. So I'm going to go up here and rename this one just to idle. Keep me from having to type armature, pipe, forward. Naming naming consistently is pretty important if you're going to be interacting with stuff in your scripts. That way you don't have to jump back and forth, sorry. I'm not very good at talking and typing at the same time, so bear with me. Alright, so there are our 5 motions. So now, to transition between these, we simply right-click on a motion, or an action, make transition, and then drag this line here up to whatever action we're transitioning to. So we're going to transition to forward. We'll click on that transition. We've got a little preview here, and I'll go through all this stuff in a second. But right now, what I want you to worry about is this transition. When are we going to do it? We are going to do it under the condition that forward is true. That's it. Okay. Now, forward, back to right-click, make transition back to idle. We're going to go from forward back to idle if, click on our transition, if idle is true. Easy enough, right? Okay, so same thing, idle to right. We are going to do if, slide that down a little bit more. If right is true, and then from right going back to idle, we're going to do that. If idle is true, idle to back. If back is true, back to idle. If idle is true, idle to left. If left is true, and left to idle if idle is true. Okay, so left, forward, back, right. Good. Okay, now remember how when in Blender, when we animated these things, we had a little pause here, right? So that we kind of stayed in the same place. The reason we did that is because of these transitions in Unity. If you look right here, this area here is the transition area. And so since we're not really, we're coming to the same pose at the end of each of our previous poses, right? So let's just slide this to be pretty narrow, and then slide the next pose out here and let go, and it'll snap back to wherever you slid the arrow to. So that'll make sure that when we're transitioning from idle to right and back, let's do it on the back also. That'll make sure that we're not in mid-hop up off the ground when we wind up doing our stuff. So, why is he way up in the air like that? Get down there on our board. Okay, so there we go. Now both of those are done. Let's take care of the rest of them. And again, we're doing this so that we don't wind up in midair after we transition between two poses, since we're going to be using root motion. Again, just slide that, slide that, slide that. We'll get there, bear with me. And we've already done those. Okay, Control S to save your scene because we hate to get rid of any work. Now, if we hit play, sorry, the camera's bugging me. There we go. Now, if we hit play, we can see that our idle pose runs and then stops. So the way to fix that is to go over here to King. You can click on each of these individual ones, but then you have to go over here and click on Edit. I just like to go to King and say, hey, on all my animations, on idle, I want to loop by time. All right. And see on jump back, I'm not going to loop on these since we're just going to be doing them once. If you were going to be doing multiples, you would set loop on those as well. But since we're just doing once, we don't need to worry about setting loop. I mean, I'm going to go ahead and do it here just to show you that when we do our transitions through code, that we will wait to the end of a loop. But normally you wouldn't have to do that. So apply, play, and what happened there? Okay, sorry about that. I paused the video to figure out what I'd done wrong. So basically what I had done wrong was when I exported, I had this thing in the middle of our jump back pose. And so it actually exported the default position as that. So what I did was I went back and I set it to our T pose, shift left to make sure it was at frame 1, and then file, export, FBX, re-export your file, and when I went back to Unity, he had jumped back to where he was supposed to be. So where were we? Okay, so now we play, and we have our nice idle pose going over and over. If we set our forward, he jumps backwards. And why is he doing that? Because this is the reason for this whole tutorial, is because this is what I was having trouble with, and it took me a while to figure out. If we go to our king object here, we need to apply root motion to the instance of our object, and then go to our king object, and we have model, rig, and animations at the top. We go to rig, tell it where our root bone is, which is the bone that we named root, and apply. And then we go over to animations. And now you'll notice that since we selected our root node over there, down here we have extra options, which is root transform rotation, position Y, and position XZ. So for some reason, it chooses root node rotation for some and original for the other, and that's what's making us go backwards. We need to drop these down and set them all to original, make sure our loop time is applied, or our loop time is checked, and then apply. And then, if we go and play, we've got our looping idle animation, and if we set our forward to true, he will start hopping forward. Now the reason we had to do all that is because if you do not set apply root motion and you don't have the root set, then when he starts hopping forward, he's not going to move, or he's going to hop forward and then warp back to his starting point. And I've even had him hopping backwards. So the correct things to do there, and I'll go over them again one more time. Under rig, set your root, and then under animations, make sure you have loop time set if you want to loop it, and if you don't want to loop it, then just make sure that all three of these are set to original. Got it? Well, I can't hear you answering me. So how do we control this through a script now that we've got everything working? Well, we've got these wonderful things here. So let's go to our instance here and add a new script. I will be doing this in C#, and we'll do king movement. And then let's go ahead and create our scripts folder. Move king movement into scripts. And then we will double click to edit in our nifty monodevelop utility. Okay, so what are we going to want here? So we are going to want an instance of our animation controller. So let's do Animator, anim. We'll grab that on start so we don't need to make it public. And under start, we will do anim equals get component open animator. Whatever animator is attached to this, we're going to grab that. Okay, now we've got a interface to grab information from and send information to this animator component that we have attached, and that'll return that information to our script. So we are also going to want to get our keystrokes. So let's just use W, A, S, and D, and I realize if you were coding this for real, you would be adding logic to see whose turn it was, but right now we're just trying to demonstrate this root bone movement. So let's just do if input dot get key down, let's see, key code dot W, that'll be moving forward. Okay, so let's make sure that we're actually in an idle state to keep us from jumping left or right or going backwards in the middle of a jump. So if animator, that's what we assigned up here, and we're going to get, what was it? Get our clip info, where'd it go? Get current animator clip info. State info is what we want. Yes, state info. Layer 0. Equals, let's see, idle, right? Yep, okay. So what this line is saying is we're going to reference our animator, which is that animator component. Whatever state we're in, we want the name of that state. So if we go back over here to Unity, the name of our idle state we change to idle. Nice and simple, right? All right, so what that's going to do is if we happen to be in the middle of our forward movement, it's not going to make us start another animation there. So if we are in idle, then we want to set idle equals false and forward equals true. So that's as simple as animator, our animator controller, and we are going to set bool because we are dealing with Boolean values. And we can say idle true or false. Now, this will work. However, it's not very efficient. So what we want to do here is declare some integers. The reason this is not efficient is because it's going to have to convert this string to an integer hash every single update frame. So it's a lot better because these set values for our animator components actually want an integer hash for these strings. So we will do int hash idle, int hash forward, int hash back, int hash left, and int hash right. And then we will set those one time equals animator dot string to hash idle. Forward, back, left, right, and so sorry, again, I'm not too good at talking and doing at the same time. And you know what? Yeah. Okay, so we've got our idle, forward, back, left, and right there. So we can now change this to hash idle. And there we go. So we're going to set our idle to false. If our animator state info is idle, set idle to false, and anim.setBool hash forward true. Right, beautiful. So now if we go back and try that, well, let's go ahead and finish up in code first so we're not jumping back and forth. Else, and why are we doing else? Because we only want one key at a time to be active. So if somebody's just mashing, we're not going to get unexpected results. So else, copy and paste, tidy it up. Okay, so else if S is down and our animation is idle, we're going to set idle to false and back to true. All right, I like copy and pasting. Can you tell? A and D. So if A is down and state is idle, idle is false, and A is going to be left, and D, idle, idle false, right. So else, if no keys are down, and if we're not idle, because if we are idle and we haven't started our other animation yet, then we don't want to just jump right back to idle. It takes a little bit for the animation state to kick off. So if we were to not put this if statement in, and you hit W and let go of W real quick, then basically it would jump to forward and then jump immediately back to idle on the next frame. So paste that down there. So we're going to set idle to true, and then we're going to set H forward, H back, H left, and H right, all to false. All right, so let's follow this logic, since I was not talking very well while I was showing you. So we've got our king movement controller. We're going to grab our animation controller, which is these two lines, and then we're going to set hashes for our idle, forward, left, and right and back strings, so that we can pass integer hashes to our set bools. Then we are going to check for key presses. We are going to check our current animator state to make sure we're not doing anything silly. And we are going to set animation or set idle to false and the direction to true if we are idle. If we're not idle and we're not pressing a key, and that shows me something I missed, exclamation point for not idle, then we're going to set idle back to true and everything else back to false. So Control S to save. We will jump back into Unity. We have an error here. Oh, that error means that over here, I'm not supposed to be doing an equals. So let's see. Let's do isName. That should work better. Oops. isName, isName, isName. and is name. Not. Okay, so the reason that wasn't working is because get current animator state info does not return a string. It returns a structure, if you will. And one of those class structures is an isName function. And I already messed up idle because I capitalized it. No, I'm not going to edit my mistakes out of this video because you guys can learn more from watching me mess up. Okay, so logic loop is sound again. IsName is being used, and that will return a Boolean. And we save and go back to Unity. And our bugs are gone. Okay, so now let's make sure that we have our idle set to start so that we can have our code grab that, and we will hit play. And we will sit there and idle over and over until we tap the W. And we forgot to change our root motion, didn't we? Apply root motion. Save and play. Okay, so there's idle. We tap W, and now we jump forward. We tap S. That's moving wrong. Why is that moving wrong? I'll tell you why that's moving wrong. Because when I showed you over here, select our FBX object and go into animations once we have our root node assigned, I showed you on the idle motion how to set it all up properly. You actually need to do that on all of your actions. See how we go down to the jump back and it freaking changes those to root node position. So on all of our actions here, we need to change those to original. You don't need to apply in between each one. Apply is kind of an all-covering action. Jump right. I wish there was a way to change this in some sort of default setting. If you know how, let me know. I'm doing it on T-pose too, just because I'm frustrated. I'm not going to loop a T-pose, it's one frame. Okay, so now I've done that for all of our actions. Apply. Now we can play. If we tap W to move forward. Ha! What happened? I'll bet you that I screwed up again. Like I said, I'm not going to go and edit my mistakes out of this video because mistakes are part of production, right? Yep. How did I manage to screw this up so badly? Okay. I'm going to pause the video just to fix this so you don't have to watch me screaming. Okay. Now we have our forward motion fixed. Apparently I had overwritten it with the backward motion. Lovely. Back to, let's make sure that the back pose has not been overridden. Back. All right. Forward. Good. They all have F's next to them, which means they'll be saved. And then we file, export, FBX, export back to Unity. Everything will be magically updated. We play, and we tap W, and now we'll jump forward. We tap S, now we'll jump backwards. We tap A or D will jump right, and A will jump left. Now, one thing that's kind of bothering me is when I tap the key, it's waiting for our idle pose to finish. So one last thing, we'll go to idle, and we will say on the transition from idle to forward, we will get rid of this has exit time checkbox. We'll also do that on the transitions to our other poses. Make sure you don't do it from, because we do want him to finish his animation in the middle of a jump, but if he's just sitting there idling, we don't care about interrupting that animation. So Control S to save, play, and now no matter where we are in the middle of an idle animation, he will automatically start his jump. And if we pretend that these squares are checkboxes, so we select our guy, move him into the middle of one of these squares, move our camera over, play, and there we go. All right, so that is how you get root bone motion properly working in Unity, between Unity and Blender. This could be used if you have an animation of your character rolling and you don't want to try to get that working with your your stride length and all that stuff. You could animate him in place and just move the root bone along with him. There's lots of other situations which this would be handy, but that's how I got it working. Thank you very much. If you have any questions, leave them in the comments, and I will do my best to answer them. Have a good day.